As you progress with your project, there will probably come a time where you want to add some text. Now, one of the ways is by using Photoshop. However, there is a much more elegant and efficient way of doing this within Premiere Pro by using its titler function. Before I do, notice here in my program monitor, I can clearly see my clip. However, we can see what are known as safe margins that we can superimpose over the top of our clip. Let me just show you what they are. Right click, then just roll down to that bottom option, Save Margins. You'll see these rectangular areas. The inner rectangular area is known as the safe margin for text, and that's what we're concerned with here. If you place your titles inside this inner rectangular area, your text will be safe to be seen without going off the screen. If I go to the top left of our user interface, I'll click on Title, and I can see my option at the top is called New Title. Fly out to the right, and I can either choose between a default still, a roll, or a crawl. I'm going to choose a default still, then set up my dimensions. I'm going to leave my dimensions exactly as they are. I could give this a name. Seeing as I'm only creating this one, I'll leave it at the default title number 1 and OK it. I'll now see this titler user interface. Possibly the first thing you'll notice is my safe margins are visible. We've got our clip here, and we are going to be able to superimpose over the top text we would like to add. And you add your text by using the Tools panel here. I'm going to choose the T at the top to add some text. And if I click within my safe margin area, then I can add some text. And by grabbing my selection tool, I'll move this down so that it sits within the safe margin area for text, just at the bottom of it there. I'm okay with the font size, but I want to adjust the spacing so that it spreads right across the bottom there within our safe margin area. I'll left click here and drag to the right so that it moves across and fills that safe margin area. I've done this by eye, but if I want to get this to centralize my text, then down here I've got a vertical center. Clicking on that moves my text to the middle vertically, or by clicking on this one, this will now center my text horizontally. It's now been centralized. Now I could accept it like this, but if I want to choose a preset title style, then notice all these different presets down here. Flick through until you find the one that you quite like. And there we go. Do notice though that running down the right hand side, you'll get all these different title properties. You'll see things like font family and font size, etc, etc. They are self-explanatory if you've ever used a word processor before. If you are comfortable with InDesign or Photoshop even, then this will all be very familiar to you. Once you are satisfied, all you need to do is close this titler. Once you do, automatically down in your project panel, you will see that title number 1 brought in. It's not placed on my timeline. I've not got it superimposed over the top of my clip yet. What I need to do is click on it, then drag it over onto the timeline. I'm going to drag it here, just above video track 1. And because it's transparent, apart from the text, then only the text shows. Notice if I right click, then run down to Safe Margins, my text sits within the safe margin area. Okay, so that's a quick run through how we use titles and how we create them and how we make them sit within a safe margin area so that we guarantee that when we finish our movie and convert it to a DVD, that text will always be visible on a TV screen. Right, we'll finish up here then, and I'll see you in a moment, okay? Now that we've seen how we can add a title so that it's superimposed over the top of our clip, let's have another look at how we can do a similar function, but this time not with a static title. This time I'm going to get some text so that it rolls vertically through our screen. Because you might have noticed when we were creating that static title in the previous tutorial, there were a couple of different options. There was an option to create a roll or a crawl. A roll is, as I've just explained, the text will appear and scroll vertically. By contrast, a crawl will move across your screen horizontally. We set either up in pretty much the same way, so rather than just duplicate the information, I'm just going to show you the first option, create a roll title. Here's what we do then. Hit title, roll down to new title of course then. When you fly out to the right, there you'll see those two options I've just spoken about, default roll and default crawl. I will choose default roll, and then immediately I see this new title dialog box. I'm going to leave the settings exactly as they are because they do match my clip. I'll leave the name as title number 3 and hit OK. We now see this titler user interface that we saw in the previous tutorial. I'm going to click on the text tool, click within my safe area, and I'm just going to type in a load of rubbish for this example so that you can see how this works when it's moving vertically. And by clicking on here, I will centralize the text. I'm going to select this title style, centralize it once more. Now, don't close it like this because all you will get is static text. You need to click on this button here, this roll/crawl options button. Once you do, you'll see these roll/crawl options. And within my title type, we see these 4 separate options still, roll, or if we were doing this as a crawl so that the text moved across the screen horizontally, you could choose where the text would come in from first of all. Will it crawl from the left or from the right? Crawl left is the more standard approach. We're going to stick with roll, and I want my text to start off screen so that initially the text won't be visible and then it will emerge and scroll vertically. I also want it to disappear at the end of our screen as well. So by checking in these 2 checkboxes means that that is what's going to happen. Now I'll simply OK it, and I'll click on the cross here to close my titler. And like in the previous tutorial, there we now see our title added to our project panel. It takes on a different icon. Notice the colour of the label as well is slightly different. I'll left click on it and then drag it up onto video track 2. We'll move back up to the program monitor. Notice we can't see the text at the moment. The text is off screen, which is what we set that checkbox to do. I'll click play and you watch how the text emerges and then scrolls vertically. It's only quick, but you get the idea how this can work within your project. So that's how we create a roll or a crawl title rather than a static title. We'll leave it here then and we'll move forward once more. During the last couple of tutorials when we've looked at using the titler, in the first instance to create a static title and in the second instance using text that scrolls vertically over our video, or in this case we used a photograph, but the principle remains the same regardless of whether you use a photograph or a video. Well, during those couple of tutorials when we were looking at the titler, we also casually implemented one of the styles. So I thought in this tutorial it would be worth having a look at the text styles area in a little bit more detail. So I'll run up to title, and for our example I'm just going to use a default still. Within this dialog box you can probably guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave everything as the default, so I'll OK it. And then now with our titler panel open, let's have a quick look at what we can do with any of those title styles that we see right down at the bottom. Incidentally, the way I'm recording these movies for you mean that I've got this titler panel open in full view. It's quite likely that when you open it, once you've created a new title, that it will float above your copy of Premiere Pro. All I've done is I've resized it. Okay, so that's easy enough to do if you want to resize it as well. Right, what have we got? Well, there's our photograph that's on video track 1 back on the Premiere Pro timeline. If you don't want to see this, or indeed if you can't see it, it's probably because of this button up here. Once it's selected like this, then I can see whatever is on our timeline. If I click it, then we now don't see it. That doesn't remove it from Premiere Pro's timeline, it's just made it invisible here for us. I find it very useful to have it on, so I'll click it again, show background video. Okay, so here's the title styles down at the bottom, and you can see there are quite a number of these. You might need to scroll down to see them all. Okay, now before you can actually do anything in terms of these styles, you have to have some text on your canvas, so I'll do that. With my text tool, I'll type in the word Anglesey. However, because it's in white at the moment, the text, then that might be one of the reasons why you don't want to see this background photograph. Because as it is at the moment against this photograph, that white text has disappeared, well pretty much anyway. So I'm going to change it. I'll come down over to the properties area, and here where it says colour, oh by the way, we'll be looking at this properties panel in a little bit more detail in the next tutorial. For the moment, just bear with me. So double clicking on here opens up my colour picker, and then you would just simply choose a colour from within here. Black, for example, will show up clearly, of course, on that sort of whitish grey background. However, for our example, I want to choose the colour for this text taken from the actual guitar. So I'll click on this cancel button, and then now by coming back over to colour and using the colour picker, I can sample the colour that I want to use from our guitar. There's fine. And now I can see my word Anglesey there. And this is useful because it now seems I've misspelt Anglesey. I couldn't detect that before when it was white against white. So now I'll correct the spelling. Okay. And if I want to move it to somewhere else, grab the selection tool and of course drag it to wherever you feel fit. I'll start off in this top corner, not quite the top corner of the image, but the top corner of this safe area, this textual safe area. And if I want to enlarge it in terms of font size, the quickest way is to roll your cursor over the corner, left click, and drag it out until you get the size that you want it to be. And you'll see over here in the properties panel the font style, the font size, and the aspect, etc, etc. Well, we're concerned with the font size and the aspect. Notice as I enlarge it once more, those numbers of course update to reflect the size that I now make this. Now over here with the aspect, I notice it's just above 100%. So to my eyes that will distort the text. So I'll take this to 100%. Okay, better. So then now I've created some text. You would imagine it would be a simple process to come down to these styles and click on any of these, but notice what happens. Bearing in mind I've got the selection tool selected, I'll click on one of these styles, this one for example. Well, as you can see, it's done absolutely nothing to our text, although you might notice here in the tools panel that this particular style has been added here. Well, that's great, but it's of no use to us really, is it? We want to apply this style to the text itself. Well, of course, what we need to do is have the text first of all selected before we apply any style. Now, just before I remove that, do notice though, if I start to add in some new text, down here for example, then whatever I've got placed here, whatever I click last in terms of styles and registered here in the tools panel, then that particular style will be the textual style that now gets utilized. Okay, now I don't actually want that. So I'll use Ctrl+Z to take me back a step and remove it from view. Right, so what do we do? Make sure you've got your text tool, click somewhere within your text, and then from this point, whatever style you choose will now be updated and reflected within your text. So with this one, for example, the same one, well there you go. We now see that text style integrated within our text. And because it is selected, I can choose any of these other styles. Okay, any of these really. Just keep flicking through until you find the one you like. You might need to navigate down. Now, I don't particularly like this one. It's a little bit too, I don't really know how to describe it, but it doesn't suit this image. However, I do want to use it for the moment, just to show you something that we can see over in the title properties panel. You'll see that this particular text color, or rather the fill, is a multitude of the same shade. It's not just one color. As we can see here where it says fill type, what we see is a 4-color gradient. Now the 4 colors that have been chosen as part of this style are very complementary. They're not too far apart. They reside pretty much within the same color area. But if you want to make this completely different, then click on one of the color boxes in each of the corners. And those corners reflect where that particular shade is within the letter. This one in the top left-hand corner will reflect the color or the shading or the blend of that color anyway in the top left of each individual letter. If I want to change it, double click on here and then this opens up our color picker once more. Maybe I don't want it to be the color it is at the moment. Maybe I want it to be darker. Well, I'll choose somewhere else within here and OK it. Consequently now, we see in our rectangular area that that particular darker shade, well, we can see it there, can't we? And also we can see it on our letters. It's darker in the top left of each of those letters. Let's go to the extreme. I'll click on the bottom right hand corner and I'll also go to the extreme in terms of color. I'll choose within here so I can grab a blue and then click anywhere here to select a shade of blue and then I'll OK it. OK, and of course our rectangular area updates. We now see that 4-color gradient, darker in the top left, blue at the bottom right, which is reflected in each of our individual letters. At the bottom right of each individual letter, we can just about see that sort of shaded blue there. Of course, you don't have to use the color square. You can use the color picker if you want to grab a color from within your image, like we did earlier. So I'll do that. I'll click here on the guitar, Okay, and because our bottom right hand corner is still selected, then that now takes on that colour. If I want to grab the bottom left, first of all I need to select it. It opens up the colour picker. I don't actually want it, so I'll close that. What I want to use is the colour picker tool, and then now I'll choose a different area within the guitar. So now we get complementary colours all round, well pretty much anyway, drawn from the guitar. Okay, I'll just grab my selection tool and click away outside of the text. And there we go, looking great. Although I don't really believe that, do I? But you can see the principle of what we can do when we want to use text styles and then adapt them to suit our look. Right, I'm going to leave it here then, and in the following tutorial, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to look at the title properties panel running down the right hand side. Earlier we looked at the properties panel when using the titler, when we adjusted the colour gradients of the text implemented, i.e. our one-word Anglesey. Here we're going to look further at the properties panel and how it relates to other text editing tools too. Let's open up the titler for this existing title by double-clicking on it. OK, loaded. Now before looking at the title properties on the right, let's see how they link or relate to those text editing tools above where our preview area is. As we can see, the text takes on this font, but click here to reveal a list of the fonts available to you on your system. The available font list will be specific to your system. I'll change the text to Prestige Elite and immediately this reacts and updates the text. OK, now I'll try another one. What about this one? Rockwell Condensed. Now that's much smaller in size on the canvas, and the letters are more squished together. We need to sort out the kerning for this, because the kerning is much tighter. I'll try another one. Roddy. OK, more funky looking. So that's how you can change the font here. Let's move along now. Let's adjust the text size. It's stated here as 250. Let's increase it. I'll left click and drag to the right there, and I'll take it up to more than 400. What's that? 410? Notice that this 410 figure is also updated and reflected in the title properties panel at the right, as are all the other functions. For example, I'll make the space wider between the letters by adjusting the kerning up here, and we'll see it automatically update at the right in our title properties. I'll increase it from 0 up to 16, and here it is at the right, updated to 16 too, as we would expect. Now some options aren't immediately available at the right, in fact some aren't there. Here above our preview area, for example, see that I can adjust the justification settings. I'll go for centrally, and do note that that's not available over here in title properties. So even though the two areas do generally link, they don't always in every way. So let's look at title properties now in more detail to see what is available. You'll see it's categorized. At the top we've got transform, then we've got properties, then fill, etc., etc., working your way down. Now I'm just going to collapse from view all of these for the moment, and I'll start at the top by looking at transform. You can adjust the text opacity from 100%. I'll take it down to 20%. So now we see we've got 1/5 of visibility. I'll take it back up to 100%. You can also adjust the text position. There's an X and a Y axis. I'll adjust the X-axis from 868, well 868.4, and I'll increase it slightly to 887, 887.4 actually. OK, I'll just open up the rotation area. I can move my text not only positionally left to right and up and down, but also on an angle by using this rotation. I'll adjust it from 0 to just above 41, 41.2 degrees using the dial. OK, now that's quite skewed. Part of the text is off the page. So I'll return to 0, I'll click in the number field and type in 0 degrees. OK, now I'm just going to collapse rotation and its properties from view. Now I'll move down to properties within here. Like earlier, we can change the font from what it's at the moment, from Roddy. I'll click and choose Sake, do you know I can't even pronounce that. Sake Michala, is it? I don't know. Whatever it is, it's another font on my system. OK, now you can adjust the font style from regular to bold if there is one available. So what I suggest is just work your way down these self-evident options. Now if they're not self-evident to you by the name, what I suggest is just try it. You can always reverse your decision. OK, now moving down to fill, I'll open this. And now we see the 4-color gradient that we looked at previously. I'll click its drop-down list here to choose or change to solid, and now we see our text now takes on that one solid slab of our chosen color. OK, I'll choose a different style as such. I'll try linear gradient, And now we can choose between two colours if we like. I'm going to grab the colour picker and choose a colour from the guitar. And so now our linear gradient fades between a sort of lightish brown to yellow now. Okay, right, I'm going to go back to 4-colour gradient where we started. And as I said earlier, just work your way through the other options for strokes. You can change the inner and the outer stroke, or work your way down to shadow. You can either add a shadow or take it away by clicking in that checkbox there. Okay, so that's it then. Essentially all the tools here that you've probably used before in word processing programs. Certainly if you are an Adobe InDesign user, then these options will be very clear to you. Probably one of the most immediate ways to include titles within your Premiere Pro project is to use text professionally set up for you without you having to do most of the hard work. Well, of course, Adobe to the rescue. You can do just that by utilizing text templates directly from within Premiere Pro's titler function. That said, you will need to have the templates installed, which isn't always the case initially. Let me show you. I'll walk you through the process and show you some examples. First of all though, I want to remove this title from video track 2. I'll select it and hit delete on my keyboard. And seeing as it's down in the project panel too, I'll delete it here by right clicking on it and running up to clear. Okay, all sorted. We've now got a blank canvas. Not literally true, we've still got our guitar photograph. Now I'll just do a quick save. Right, here's the process. First of all, I need to create a new title. So I'll click title up here on the menu and I'll drop down to new title. And then I'll fly out. This time though, down to the bottom option based on template. Okay, so that's one way of accessing it. I'll just click away to show you another method. I just need to expand our project panel and then click this new item button and choose the 4th option down, title. Now I'm going to leave the defaults in the dialog box as they are, apart from changing the name. Maybe I'll change the name to template 1 and I'll OK it. And of course now our titler opens. So from here to access the templates from within here means clicking this templates button, or you could use the shortcut Ctrl+J. Either way, this templates dialog will open. At present, as you can see, mine is empty. However, if you have already installed the extra content, yours will be populated with categorized templates. But as you can see, none of my options reveal any templates. So I'll hit cancel for the moment, and I'll also click on the close down cross there on the titler. So what do we do to access the templates? Well, if you own a previous version of Premiere Pro, you'll have them on a disk. But now that Premiere Pro is cloud-based, you'll have to download them. So let's open Title again, and I'll choose the same options to get through to the templates dialog like a moment ago. And then I'll select this option, Title Designer Presets. Once you do, you'll see this information down here revealed, and to its right, this download link that will take you to Adobe's website download page. Click it, and then once here, choose appropriately for your system, either Mac or PC. Now the download size is around 800 megabytes and includes Encore templates too. So I'm going to pause the screen recording whilst this takes place. Okay, all done. Once downloaded and installed, you'll now have access to them all from within the titler panel. Now I'll just switch off the background so I can concentrate on the available templates. And then now if I click this templates button, the templates dialog opens once more, but this time populated with the newly installed downloaded templates. There are quite a lot of them, and all conveniently categorized. Here within Corporate, for example, and within its subcategory of Abstract, I see a list of what's available, and also a preview to its right. As you work your way through these, you'll see templates to cover high-definition full dimensions, or if you just want to cover part of the video, these lower thirds options. As we can see with the preview, it covers just the bottom third of the canvas, with 2/3 of it transparent above, as indicated by the checkerboard pattern. When you see that checkerboard pattern, that tells you that whatever is there, well, isn't there really, that's a transparent area. So my suggestion is just have a browse through the different categories and select some whilst previewing, and you'll soon spot a template that you want to use as your starting point. I say starting point because, yes, it's done the hard work of the design element, but we need to modify the text to get it to say what we want it to say. Or, even further from this, adapt the text styles. Now I'm going to settle on this one, this info screen 1001 for my example, so I'll OK it to bring it into the titler, ready to be adapted and modified to suit our project. For example, I could change the text here by changing the words of numbers to their numerical equivalents. I'll just do the first two for now, and then from here I could click a new style. Okay, so that now applies to this text area. It didn't change the top text, and that's because that's composed of a separate text box with its text. Okay, so just go ahead like I am here, just modifying until you're satisfied with the result. Okay, so we'll bring this tutorial to a close, and in fact this section, now that we've seen how easy it is to use a template to speed up the text adding process.